If you are picking a brain and one listens to everything you tell it to do, works according to plans, sticks to schedules, is obedient and calm, and the second is a hellscape of chaos and obsession, lacks all sense of structure and organisation, and just loves staying up until 3 a.m, overthinking every night, I mean, you'd pick the first one, right? Everything seems to be built for type 1 brains. In a world full of success stories based on consistency, atomic habits, and self-disciplined routine, it can seem impossible to succeed without just that. And so for the longest time, all I've wanted was a different brain, one that would actually listen to me, because as someone who has never been able to create any sense of long-term structure, if you can relate to me at all, here is how I think we can end up right where our consistent, habit-forming friends are without ever needing to be consistent or create habits. Because even though on the outside I realize it looks as though I'm an organized person, I run this YouTube channel by myself, I have a podcast and jobs and school, but the thing is, on the inside, it's probably not what you think it is. So let's just get straight into it. I'm going to start my case against consistency and habit formation using my younger self as an example, because I feel that she had a much better grasp on how to organize myself. So I'm going to get a slight cringe pass here, but when I was younger, I was very good academically. At the end of the year, I would always have the best grades, I would win Olympiads, I would get all types of reward for excellent academic achievement. So you would presumably think that I was a very organized and well put together student, and this is not the case. On any given day of the year, if you were to zoom in, chances are I had forgotten what subjects I had that day. I might have left my homework at home or had never done my homework because I'd forgotten to do it, or sometimes very cheekily, I just didn't want to do it. And so I very often kind of fell behind during the year, but this was completely normal to me. I always recognized that sometimes I didn't feel like doing something, so I fell behind, and then I got interested in it, so I caught up, and then I got very interested in it, so I went ahead. And this fall behind, catch up, and go ahead schedule was very natural to me. Very often on the same day that I was behind on something, that night I would study the next 3 months of that subject that we hadn't even done yet, so I would go ahead everyone else. I was just using my passion when I wanted to do things. And one of the most important things I'd had to reteach myself as an adult is that falling behind is not quitting. It's just a third of the story. Because I feel as though when I got older and I got used to seeing everyone being super consistent and having these habits, as soon as I didn't do something for a while, I thought that I had quit and that I'm just not as good as everyone else at this thing and it's not right for me. When this is not the full story. Being a chaos and passion driven person, falling behind is just a third of the story. Sometimes I don't do things, but it's guaranteed that if I genuinely want to do them, I will catch up and go ahead much later. And this has been such an important thing for me to relearn. I genuinely believe that consistency is not for everyone, and those of us who cannot adapt it end up quitting so many things just because we think that we can't be consistent and therefore we cannot do it. I know it's not the best thing in the world, but sometimes I go to gym 5 times a week for a few months in a row, and sometimes I won't go to the gym at all for 5 months. But I know that this doesn't mean that I hate exercising, because I'm going to want to do it again and I'm going to catch up on the progress that I missed out on during that time when I genuinely didn't feel like doing it. Just because I stopped does not mean that I have quit something forever. Douglas Adams has a quote that I really relate to when he says that I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise they make as they go by. And this is so relatable for me. Any sort of artificial deadlines are just not serious enough for me to use. And therefore, even though that I know that there are some harsh deadlines in life, for example, when I was younger, I had end of year exams. Now as an adult, I need to hand projects in. I have other things that I need to do for work. But in between now and then, I do not create any real deadlines. Anything that I put in my calendar is a suggestion. It's not something that I need to do. It's more like, if I feel like it, I might do this today. But just because I skip it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row doesn't mean that I cannot catch up on this thing later, or that I'm not good at this thing at all. I only treat real deadlines like deadlines. All the arbitrary ones are suggestions, and I don't create any sort of self-hate or hatred for the thing that I'm doing around them. Now I'm very comfortable never being a consistent habit-forming girl, but always being a fall behind, catch up, and go ahead girl, because just like it used to do well for me academically when I was younger, it honestly does really well for me in life right now, because it's just the way I work. And this leads me very comfortably onto what's perhaps a very controversial point, which is screw 1% improvements. I love James Clear. His book Atomic Habits is really, really good, but it genuinely has caused me a lot of damage, because when I saw his 1% improvement graphs, which is basically the thought that if you keep improving at something just 1% every single day, by the end of the year, you will be exponentially better at this thing, which is really, really true. It's 100% true. So I looked at this graph and my heart just sank, because I realized I could never do this. I could never do something consistently for a year, because the best way to get me to hate something or to quit something is to make a strict schedule for it. If you tell me, Elizabeth, you need to do this thing 3 times a week for the next 2 months, there's no chance. I'm just going to leave it. And so I realized that it's never going to work, because 1% improvements only work if you do things very consistently. If you do things 3 times a month and you improve 1% every time, you're getting absolutely nowhere. And even worse, if you do things twice a year and you improve only 1% at them, that's no improvement. You're going to stop doing these things, because as Frederick Hesberg in the Harvard Business Review identified, something that we probably all know intuitively, of all forms of human motivation, the most effective one is progress, which basically means the better we get at something, the more we want to do it. And this 1% improvements only works if you're consistent. And so I'm stuck in this conundrum where I have to be consistent in order to improve. And so I can never improve or want to do everything. And I'm always stuck with low level motivation for everything in my life. This is where my method comes in. Basically, what I've decided is to completely screw the 1% improvements and go for 5%, 500%, 5,000% improvements every single time. And genuinely, this is how I've learned my skills. This is how I've learned to draw, to paint, to edit, and everything. So I'm going to explain how I do this specifically. If you are also a chaotic, passionate person, hopefully this might work for you. A few years ago, I wanted to learn 3D animation because I saw people who create the video game characters and stuff, and I thought, oh my god, this looks so cool. I want to learn how to do it. The way to quit this for me is to go, okay, so twice a week for the next 6 months, I'm going to slowly learn how to 3D animate. No, this would never work. What I do instead is that I do nothing, but I just passively kind of look at animations here and there. So whenever I'm procrastinating or I have some free time, I'll just go through my phone and I'll look at really good 3D animated work. And what I'm doing here is that I'm passively priming my brain to get passionate about this thing and to fall in love with this thing. And I'm not allowing myself to start the work, because I'm just doing this thing slowly and slowly and slowly. And at some point I'll reach a tipping point where I'll go, screw it, I need to learn this right now because I can't wait to learn this. So then I'll just sit down, and honestly, I had never done any work before in my life. I sat down and I sat for maybe 10 to 15 hours on my laptop, and I taught myself from nothing to be basically quite good at learning to animate. And then on the second day, I created this, and I'll show it on screen. On the third day, I was really good. I created this. So in 3 days, I learned something that admittedly I could have paced myself and done for a very long time if I was different. I just can't do things that way. So I went for like 10,000% improvements basically in the space of 3 days, which otherwise I would have never been able to achieve, because if I would have tried to get to 1% improvements, I would have quit very, very early on. So this is how I learn skills without creating habits. I prime myself for extreme passion, and then I get to do them. And also another huge benefit of this is that you get to learn things so much faster and with so much more focus, because as much as I envy and I'm so jealous of consistent and organized people because they can do so many things, the one thing that I think I'm a lot better at is deep work. I don't understand why people struggle with deep work. I'm always falling into deep work. And I think it's because they pace themselves too much and they create these short schedules. Oh, well, I'm only going to do this for 40 minutes a day. If you sit into it, if you get in the proper mood to want to do something properly, you can get extreme levels of focus and therefore crazy results. And because for my personal projects and things that I want to work on, I only work in a deep work state, I can get so much more done and learn a lot faster. And therefore, I'm leveraging huge amounts of passion, huge amounts of focus, the best kind of state of mind for learning to get extreme results really, really fast without 1% improvements. So yep, this is how I hack my brain into learning things. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you might be thinking this really doesn't work for everything, and you would be 100% right. I think the toughest pill for me to swallow, especially as a competitive person, is the realization that there are certain things in life that I will just never be good at. I know this is hard to say for me, but it's just true. I will never be good at memorizing facts, because you need to repeat things again and again in order to remember them consistently. It's not for me. I love exercise, but I will never be a bodybuilder because it takes ridiculous amounts of food restriction and exercise for a long amount of time to get somewhere, and I can absolutely never do that. But this doesn't mean that I can't learn some things or that I can't enjoy exercise. So I think that in my life, I do not optimize for consistency, I optimize for passion, because even though there are some things that I'm always going to be really bad at, there are some things that I'm always very, very good at. I can get inhumane amounts of work done in a short burst of time. I can learn huge amounts of information in short periods of time. And also I have a very creative, bigger picture mind, because I touch things intensively and then I leave them for a very long time. So when I come back to them, I can see things differently. So I'm very good at bigger picture thinking. So if you're also kind of a chaotically passionate person, you might be the same as me, and we're better at these things than we are at strict scheduled routines. So when it comes to both personal projects and as much as I can in my professional life and things things that I have less control over, I tend to optimize for being a passionate person, because that's where I can shine. There's this very interesting study that showed that 50% of the amount of work done in a company is done by the top 10% of workers. And also, the best performer is 100 times more productive than the lowest performer in the company. And this doesn't mean that we should all aim to be the most productive person, but basically what that means is that these people who are at the top are probably having a lot more fun and also just in their natural element. So I think recognizing my strengths, recognizing the things that I'm good at, and optimizing for those as much as I can leads to better results in my life. And also just letting go of the things that are just too painful and impossible for me to do, because trust me, I've tried and it does not work. As a slight caveat here, of course, I do not mean that I lead my life just based on my feelings and passions, and some level of strictness and rigorousness and routine is absolutely necessary to function in the world, especially with meetings and jobs. So I can do these things, I'm just not the best at them. And so even though there's these strict schedules, when it comes to the work that I need to do on my own, which realistically is a huge amount of work on any job, I'm a lot less strict and a lot less rigorous and a lot more passion driven. My next very important point is having adult and not childish and bratty conversations with myself, because very often I can be a childish brat in my mind. And what I mean by this is that if I have something to do and I don't do it, I can be very annoying. If you asked a child why they didn't do a task and they told you, I'm just a lazy person and I didn't do it, you wouldn't accept that answer, would you? You'd probably go, okay honey, that might be true, but what did you do instead? And why did you feel that you wanted to do that more? What would have made this task more interesting for you? When do you think you might want to do it? And most importantly, why do you think you need to do this in the first place? I think it's so underrated exploring why we need to do things, because you're not an idiot. You can't just tell yourself to do something and then you're going to do it. I think it's very important to explore why we make choices in the first place when we can, and when we don't have a choice and we have to do things anyway, kind of exploring why this is important and why things function this way might make it much more likely for us to actually go through with the task. So when it comes to conversations with myself, I cut myself off when I go, I'm just a procrastinator. Oh, I'm so lazy. Oh, I just didn't want to do it. And rather go a level deeper and say, what needs was I trying to fulfill? Because it's unlikely that I have a need to browse Instagram. I much more likely have a need to rest, or have a need to have fun, or have a need to connect with people. And I can see how I can fulfill these needs more productively in other ways, or I can see how I can turn the task that I have to do and don't want to do into something that might increase the likelihood of me kind of fulfilling these needs for connection and enjoyment and rest and everything else. So more adult conversations with ourselves, I think, are much more important in order to kind of work with the chaos in our mind. On the topic of priming my brain to get passionate to learn things, what I'm currently trying to get ready to learn is to be better at animation, specifically for YouTube videos. And I'm using Philip D'Amico's class on this on Nebula, which are very kindly sponsoring this video. It's quite embarrassing that I didn't know this as a Nebula user, but there are now full-on classes on Nebula where you can genuinely have professional creators teach you things, which is completely crazy. If you're currently already a Nebula user, it's just a $5 upgrade, but the classes are absolutely insane production value, and I'm low-key getting tempted to create one of my own. If you have any ideas, by the way, for a class for me to make, please let me know, because yeah, they look super, super cool. If you want to upgrade any of your skills, there are some classes from some of my favorite YouTubers on there already, so there'll be a link in my description if you want to check that out. But otherwise, if you made it so far, here is to endless organized chaos. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be kind to yourself and others, and don't believe everything you think. Thanks. Bye.